Hey guys, still here. Welcome back to Wargame Brendryen. Before we kick off today's match, I want to thank all the new patrons that have subscribed to me lately. There's a lot of you guys who are supporting my channel and I really appreciate it. You're the ones that really help me keep going when YouTube just keeps cutting away all the ad revenue that used to be there. And of course, as a Patreon supporter, you also get perks. One of which is that Friday night I'll be organizing the nightly Patreon night, especially for Patreons of the major rank and up. I'm going to be playing only with my Patreons, so if you want to be joining that, be sure to have a look at the link down in the description. Anyway, today in Wargame we're on gunboat diplomacy. It's gunboat diplomacy without the gunboats, no naval element. We're following the Kardon player here. He's using a Israeli general deck. He's also the one who sent in the replay, and he's going to be making a very interesting push. Normally, on this map, especially in a conquest mode, what you see is that blue takes Charlie, or whoever spawns here, they take Alpha, you get a standoff line over there, pushing across this bridge is very difficult. So mostly the fighting happens in this town, sometimes along these bridges over here to the left, and if you're lucky you will eventually capture the buildings over here. So usually it's just a big infantry grinder, a lot of infantry just goes over there to die. This one is slightly different, and that makes it very interesting. Now, Kardon is using an Israeli general deck. No specializations, no motorized units, no way to have any very high elite units. This is a 10v, or sorry, not a 10v10 tactical. This is a 3v3. So, based on the fact that it's a 3v3 and it is conquest, I'm thinking they went with normal amounts of income. Another interesting thing to note is that he did not have any contact with the other two players. He says, I met these two players in the lobby before, and I asked we stay together because they had some awesome communication. So that's interesting. Random meetups can still happen in Wargame. If you are tired of playing with random players, then have a look in the description down below and you can find the link to my Discord. We have quite a lot of new players coming in. And by new players, I mean players who are new at the game, but also players who I haven't seen yet. And I'm trying to get a couple of games in here and there each week. So if you're tired of playing alone and you want to have either a game just with a couple of randoms, but on voice comms, then be sure to join up with my Discord. Anyway, let's have a look at Kardon. He's opening with two Tsifa-Es. An Anafa command infantry helicopter, Tsifa-E on the ground, couple of transports, Ramreki, Achsarit, Merkava 2A, important grenade launcher, Bardelas. All these Israeli transports with the exception of the Hamer are exceptionally heavily armored, and that makes them quite adept at fighting in a town like this. Now, interestingly, they don't immediately capture Fox because, who's that? Muranel hasn't offloaded his CV yet. If you see something like that happening and the other team immediately gets a benefit, that means that one or the other team is using an infantry CV. If you don't want to give something like that away, just make sure that one CV stays in the zone for a couple seconds while the infantry CV gets deployed and then you can safely move it away. Anyway, he's sending in an aircraft. This is a napalm bomber, Kafir C-2. He's delaying any transports from crossing this bridge, and this is going to be critical. He also has a Kurnus around to make sure that enemy anti-air defenses will be neutralized so that his Tsefas can engage enemy helicopters. This is a very well thought out strategy, because the Tsefas take out any infantry helicopters. And that's exactly what allows him to get his units into position over here. These Tsefas unfortunately don't carry a lot of their stingers, but now that they have expended their stingers, they can still be useful. They still have their Vulcans, and they have those rocket pods. So any vehicle that comes across this bridge and is foolish enough to drive through the napalm, of which there are quite a few, they are just going to get slowed down by the Tsefa. They won't necessarily kill all of them, but at the very least, they'll be able to delay them long enough for the Shayatet 13, which came out of the Anafa, and the partner Anafa already crashed, to make sure that these guys get into a position. Further infantry is being moved into position. Rovait we have the Merkava 2A with the main gun. Unfortunately, very low ammunition on that, providing additional fire support. Maglan on the side, and this guy is just stuck. Moreover, it's just not just one guy. It's above average crazy. It's Stuka, and I believe there is even a third player in here, but I'm not exactly sure about that. The third player, Sepp, might be off to the side. And interestingly, he actually manages to hold on to these buildings. A La-V comes in, and having already suppressed any air defenses, he's able to just bomb any infantry that survives out of the way. This was an exceptionally well-constructed push. He went in with the Tsifas first to shoot down any fast transport helicopters, which were going to drop off infantry early, so that his own infantry, in this case Shite at 13, was able to get landed here. And with those into position, and the Merkavas catching up quickly with the Asarit, the Hamer transports, and the Maglans currently securing the bridge, it is going to be very difficult for Red to get back into this sector. It's not impossible, not by any stretch, but it is definitely a lot harder, because everything has to come over this bridge, or if it is amphibious, which these things are, and that's something that he could have exploited, float them across here, so you don't have everything tunneled through this bridge. That's a weird thing to say, by the way, but the bridge is just impassable. There are so many dead vehicles on here, which probably was not even intentional, that the remainder of the vehicles cannot get through. You can see that they're trying to shuffle those things out of the way. That's going to take a little bit of time. And that's time that these guys will spend exposed. And exposed to napalm. So they cannot move forward. They can't very well move backwards. And now they're caught in a giant napalm. Another good example of how to neutralize this bridge quickly. It is, of course, high stakes. Because if you do come up against an enemy who deploys a lot of air-to-air helicopters, like the TY-90, his Tsifa-Es could have been killed very easily. Then the Shayatet wouldn't land. And then he'd only have his land forces coming in. If there were more TY-90s in that initial push, I don't think it would have worked. Because the only AA that he had, or at least as far as I could see, was a Shinaf 2. Which, by the way, at this point is dead. So, they have control of Hotel, at least infantry-wise. They don't have actual control of the zone just yet, but they are already at a +3. So, if they can keep this up, then the game should be over very quickly. Over on the right, there is a little bit of defense, but really, really very little. One Leopard Verkenning, the Dutch reconnaissance tank, Leopard 2A4, a couple of reconnaissance tanks, they were reconnaissance tanks at some point, and Eugen never fixed the reconnaissance icon that you can still see on the unit card. And notice how Alex Jones over here, interesting nickname, I'm not going to get into that, is trying to push across with amphibious transports. This is what I meant when I mentioned the forest over here. Unfortunately for Red, the Maglans will spot everything, but that does not seem to be the case over here, where Sepp can see the incoming Luchs, and he could see the incoming transports, but it took him a fair bit of time to respond to that. Now, we know that there's at least one tank over there, but if that is all that there is, then they might still be able to push here. At this point though, Red has been able to neutralize this zone. They have seemingly finally captured the other zones, although Alpha is still open. If they would capture Alpha, then Red would be doing a nice +2 and would be catching up to Blue. Blue so far, with the Israeli infantry still holding the line. His infantry is consisting of Gavati for short-range anti-vehicle warfare, a couple of Rovait. These guys really aren't that good at taking down vehicles. They're mostly there as a holding force. A couple of Dorban LR with the Spike alarm missile, very, very accurate. Not the highest anti-tank capacity, but they don't really need to be, because what you're mostly trying to intercept here is transports. That is, as far as these transports are interested in trying to cross this graveyard of a bridge over here. Now the Gavati do engage, but immediately get detected and shot at by the BTR-60s. BTR-60s are trying to cross, and as they're doing so, they're getting killed off by the Gavati, and their infantry just drown. Another good way to shut down that push. Over on the right, we have an M84AN, who was exposing his side to the Dorban LR, but unfortunately the Dorban LR just couldn't really get a missile in, especially with all that tree line cover, and they're out of ammo. So hopefully he's going to be able to resupply those things. Now a couple of Bachongsu miraculously made it through. And I'm not exactly sure how they did it, they made it past that graveyard, or their vehicle was, I don't know, capable of offload here and drop them off over there. Wargame can be a little bit fuzzy like that. Now one thing that I hadn't mentioned yet on the right flank is that Alex was able to get a reconnaissance unit all the way over here. These Luchs are amphibious. Not the fastest at 43, but amphibious nonetheless. And that is very helpful, because with that, and with limited visibility from the right side, reconnaissance side here, they can quite easily get all the way over here. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be actually spotting anything, because the range is quite high, and this thing only has good optics, as opposed to very good or even exceptional. They will at least see any helicopter offensive coming, and if this Luch somehow gets killed off, then they still have a BO-105CB to counter any, or at least detect any further offenses, or offensives. And then of course there's the Gepard as a stop Gepard. Yeah, let's go with that. As a stop Gepard measure. Anyway, above average has quit the game. Doesn't mean that all of his forces are dead, it just means that Sepp inherited them. At this point, Murinel was able to get over to the left side of the bridge, so they are almost entirely devoid of Red 4 infantry over here. They might still have some in these structures, maybe over here. Blue has a CV, so we're just waiting to see if they can actually find and eliminate the Red 4 command unit over here. If so, that's another +1. And I'm really not sure why he hasn't been capping Alpha yet. It almost seems like they either forgot about it, or they were so invested in getting units to take over this town that they just did not bring any units over. Now at this point, we're also seeing a push on the right flank, smokescreen being deployed here. The Kylers were able to get across, but the Jaeger were not as lucky, and I believe that their transports died fairly early on. Here's one of them, and I think there are... No, those are the AMXs. And there's another transport. It's interesting to see how far these Kylers can actually go. This is not a good sign for Red 4. If your vehicles can really get all the way over here, then that means that your reconnaissance has failed, and also your ATGM defenses have failed. They're even pushing towards the left/middle with one reconnaissance tank, which is able to spot the infantry inside the forest. Didn't quite come out unscathed there, but was able to get at least a bit of reconnaissance done, and noticing that there's no heavy ATGM line over here will also help. They're still flying around with a Kurnus every now and then, neutralizing enemy air defenses. Unfortunately, the Neva is not capable of being detected with SEED, as it's not radar guided. So if they want to take this thing down, they're going to have to bring a big gun. And at the moment, they don't have any long-range artillery. So they know where it is, but they can't very well touch it. That is, until the Dorban LR got resupplied, and immediately proceeded to wipe out the Niwa. Couple more infantry units coming across, or at least looking like they're coming across. This point sub-surrender, so Stuka is the only guy left. And to his credit, he doesn't immediately give up. There's still 9 minutes left on this replay. So he is still here, and he just continues to fight, despite being now in control over all the forces over the entire map. Unfortunately, the Dorban LR die, the Kurnus gets destroyed, a LaVie gets destroyed. So the enemy anti-air is still powerful. You cannot just go bombing off this bridge again. There are a couple of Chonmaho 2s pushing, but even if they do get a little closer, they too have to contend with pushing through that bridge. And I don't think they're going to be able to do that, really. Now, an F-16 patrolling the skies, and you can see that Stuka at this point tries to bring in a lot of air cover. Not really sure why, because at the moment he's already proven that Blue is not exactly master and commander of the skies. And sure, they're taking some fire. There goes one. That's the MLU. Heavily damaged. But they've already lost a fair amount of aircraft, so I'm not exactly sure if this would be the ideal moment to be bringing in a lot of air power. Now this thing Winchestered and bombs the Rovaïd, which quite narrowly survived that. And now we can see that, again, the JackKnives have the problem of a couple 100 tons of vehicle in the way. This is something I don't even know if the devs had intended something like this to be even possible. I mean, you just need to drop one more cluster bomb and you wasted all these tanks because they have nowhere to go. I wouldn't want vehicles despawning. But having them just sit here and not be able to do anything, I don't know, for gameplay purposes, on the one hand it's a very, very good thing because it allows you to sort of block bridges. Just kill enough stuff and hope that it stops on the bridge. On the other hand, it creates this choke point, which for red is really, really causing too much of a problem. And blue is exploiting the hell out of it, as well they should. Cifa B going to town on the enemy infantry with the rocket pods, panicking the JackKnife tanks as far as they weren't panicked just yet, and there's not a whole lot that red can do against that. They do, however, keep bombing this place, so it's time to see Kardon operate a little bit more AA over here, as I think his fighter already got shot down. Now over on the right, the push failed. And they're still getting a +2, since Alpha still has not been captured. They're still able to bring in more reconnaissance tanks. They even have 30 Jaeger in here. And considering the fact that these guys didn't fire a single shot, they were able to clear the forest and not encounter anything. So that right flank seems pretty clear. Now for some reason, Stuka and the other guys, when they were still in the game, kept trying to push across here. Even though they knew that it was very, very difficult to get here. Trying to push into a stronghold like that is not really going to work. See, what he's doing now is getting a couple of airborne deliveries. He's going to hit the Dorban, which are now dead. He's also going to hit an Anafa. And he's working on killing more Dorban and potentially the Maclan out there. But then what? What's your follow-up? If you wanted to be clearing out this place, and that seems to be what he's doing, you can just keep bombing it, especially considering that blue does not have a lot of AA defenses over here. But then you need to follow up. I don't expect to see him have a ton of transport vehicles in here. So that means that there are not likely to be too many vehicles which are capable of pushing across this river and taking this town back once it's empty. Instead, he just keeps sacrificing high-end anti-air platforms to the Dorban LR, which are happily chewing those things up, despite the fact that they're panicked. So I think he got quite a lucky roll there for the accuracy. Now at this point, the game is over. Red has only one player left. They have 3 points versus 325. And again, credits to Stuka for not leaving. But there's really not a whole lot that he can do. He is trying to counter with a couple of aircraft, expensive ones at that. But at this point, there is just so little you can do. Sure, he could capture Alpha and prolong the game. That could help. He has full control over the battlefield, or at least all the units on the battlefield, so you're not sitting there watching your teammates fuck everything up. But he has to deal with a pretty aggressive push on his left, or his right flank, I suppose, if you're looking at it like this. His right flank has the Europeans. Down the middle, we have the Israeli Defense Force. And over on the left, we have an incursion in Alpha of actually fairly low strength, considering it's just a bunch of Jaeger and some reconnaissance tanks, or not even reconnaissance tanks, but that's just the way that they look. This, if he could secure this, he could drag the game on for another 23 minutes. He'd have to go ham on the enemy in order to get all those points back, and it wouldn't be easy. But it still could be done. However, he seems to be hell-bent on just throwing more and more units at the, albeit weakened, forces over here. Still fairly powerful garrison that he has. And you can see that the garrison is not having any more guests over tonight. The infantry, or at least some of them... Gentlemen, could you please stand on the bridge or under the bridge? Holy! Okay. Didn't expect that. Apparently they were able to get off the bridge. Although the game didn't quite render it that way. But without a smokescreen to push in, there's just not a whole lot that he can do. The Shaitet are almost down. The Rovait are also quite heavily wounded. A couple more bombing runs over here and you could wipe out this town. At which point you might actually be able to make a push. You might be able to kill off the Shenavs, especially if you have infantry or vehicles with an autocannon, and you cannot do a whole lot against those. And you'd actually have pretty free reign to the command infantry over there, the Hapak over there, and he'd pretty easily be able to push his way all the way over there. Although, of course, by the time that they see an infantry push, or even a helicopter push come over here, they would be bringing in units to counter that immediately from Foxtrot. So the first 1 or 2 might be doable, but after that it gets progressively harder. And let's just skip to the end, because at this point the game is just over. What I wanted to highlight with this game is how effective a coordinated and thought out strike on Hotel can be. Sending out a couple of anti-air helicopters ahead of your forces to make sure that enemy forces cannot capture the buildings early allows you to get in there and to take the buildings before the enemy has a chance to do so. And basically, if you have those buildings and the enemy doesn't reply with the proper units, then it is quite hard to get him out of there, as you have seen. Sepp, Stuka, and I think above average Crazy also threw a lot of forces on there that just didn't work. Now, as for the amount of kills, look at these guys. First Sifa-E's, and of course, if you haven't seen this before, the kills list, it is chronological. So, you're first going to see the first kills made. The Sifa-E killed a Z9A, probably with the Liren still inside. Killed a BTR-60P. The next Sifa-E killed a Z9, killed a Sokol, Liren, probably from the crash of the Z9A. So the Z9A got shot down. That's when the thing got killed, when it lost all hit points. Then the Tsifa engaged the Sokol. Next, I think the Z9A crashed, which might have led to the death of the Liren. XA-180, 185KT, Ito 90. These are all fairly dangerous enemy transports. They can inflict quite a lot of damage with their autocannons and grenade launchers. And by just being completely shut down by the Sifa-E, and of course by the napalm, which I don't think we're going to see. Yeah, they're not in there. That is another important element here. The Sifa-E, not the Sifa-E, the napalm bomber at the start of the match. That panicked all the transports that we're trying to push across. And a panicked transport is a less effective transport, and one that doesn't really fight back too well. So these guys, despite not surviving for terribly long, were able to murder almost all of the infantry and their transports that were coming across that bridge. The Kurnus was able to take out a Niwa, which allowed Blue to then follow up with further airstrikes. And you can see that I think at this point the bridge was almost entirely obstructed, causing the Lavi to kill off Panzerjägeri, Tank Shushu, Legion 90, a whole host of transports and even some special forces. The Maglan then, I think this was the one on the left side, took care of a whole lot of transports before they were able to do anything. Dorban LR got a couple of pretty high value kills with the Niwa SC and the Niwa Mid, or M1T. Givati killed a couple of units, and I highlighted this. They killed them, and then the infantry drowned. So the Bachongsu in there drowned as a result of the kill by the Givati, while the transport was on the water. Lavi, Merkava, just wiping out transports. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is interesting. I think that this Merkava didn't miss a single shot, because the Merkava 2A only carries 9 rounds of ammunition. And aside from that, it functions as an infantry transport. So it sacrificed quite a bit of ammo capacity to transport infantry in the back. And considering the amount of kills, this thing either got resupplied in the middle, hit something with a grenade launcher, or was just able to hit all of its shots. Now that CIFA B comes in, now that CIFA B are not the version which do ground attack, which are the version which do ground attack, as opposed to the CIFA E, which engage the aerial targets, those guys. Let's take it further down. There's the Tsifa, there's the Dorbans. Let's see where his kills came from, or his losses, that is. A Faibao countered the Kurnus. A 551, that's a transport, countered an anti-air or air-to-air helicopter. Salamandra. The Salamandra got the Shinav, that's interesting. Whenever I look at a loss list and I see one particular type of unit that got most of the kills, that's an indicator to me that I was either missing a number of units like that on the battlefield, or that my deck just doesn't have the capacity to deal with these units properly. Because you can have all the AA in your deck, but if you don't deploy it, then you can still get killed off by enemy air power. And that is what I'm seeing here. Faibao, Salamandra, Sokol, Gamma 2, TY90s, another TY90, J7H, more J7H, a whole lot more J7H, another TY90. A little bit more AA, and I think quite a few of these losses could have been prevented. But then again, he was focused on holding the ground situation, and not really with working over too many air assets. But then again, killing off the air assets would have made holding the ground situation a whole lot easier. Anyway, that's it for today. If you want to be using the deck or have a look at the deck that Kardon was using, have a look in the description down below. And again, if you want to provide support for me on the channel, then any support is appreciated. Currently only have Patreon, but I will also be looking into Subscribestar, which is an alternative to Patreon. And of course, Patreon night is this Friday. So if you want to be joining that, get to the major rank in Patreon, and I'll see you Friday. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon for more.